Despite sweeping claims made for affirmative action programs, an examination of their actual consequences makes it hard to support those claims or even to say that these programs have been beneficial on the net balance.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. You know how we do it here. We take a complicated issue, roll up our sleeves, and really get into it.
That's right. No shallow end for us.
Exactly. We're all about going deep. And today, well, we're going to tackle a topic that always seems to get folks riled up. Affirmative action.
It's one of those third rails, isn't it? People get really passionate.
Yeah, but we're not here for the shouting match. We're going to skip past the emotional stuff and just focus on the data. You know, just the facts.
I like it. Evidence over emotions.
Right. So we've got excerpts from some really insightful writing, stuff that digs into the numbers behind affirmative action programs. And you know what? The findings might surprise you.
That's usually how it goes with these deep dives.
For real. Okay, so let's set the scene.
Yeah.
We're talking about affirmative action, programs designed to, level the playing field.
Right, to address historical inequalities and, all that.
Exactly. But the question is, how well do these programs actually work? What does the data tell us?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's a question that often gets lost in all the noise.
Absolutely. One of the sources we're looking at today starts with a pretty striking example. It talks about SAT scores from way back in 2001. Apparently, over 16,000 Asian American students scored above 700 on the math portion.
Wow, that's a pretty big number.
It is. But here's the kicker. Fewer than 700 black students hit that same benchmark. And this is despite a much larger black population in the U.S.
That's pretty stark, isn't it? Makes you wonder what's going on there.
It really does. And the author of this piece uses this example to point out that maybe, just maybe, there are factors beyond discrimination that contribute to these gaps.
It's like, okay, discrimination exists, we know that, but is it the only thing at play here?
Right. It's like, are we looking at the whole picture? This brings us to a point made by economist Thomas Sowell, who argues that the supposed benefits of affirmative action are really hard to actually prove.
He's a pretty prominent voice on this, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And his point is that we rarely, if ever, see a true cost-benefit analysis of these programs.
Interesting.
Right, like what are the actual costs? What are the downsides? He even talks about mismatched affirmative action.
Mismatched? What does that mean?
Well, it's the idea that if you place students in academic environments that they're not prepared for, it can actually hurt them.
You're saying it's like setting them up to fail?
Kinda, yeah. So Sowell's research suggests that this can lead to higher dropout rates, lower self-esteem, all sorts of stuff that actually undermines the whole point of affirmative action.
Wow. So like the very programs designed to help could end up doing the opposite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's just one potential unintended consequence.
Yeah.
We also have to think about things like resentment.
Oh, yeah. I can see how that could build up.
Right. If people feel like the system is rigged or that standards are being lowered, it can create a lot of tension.
Definitely. It's almost like creating a whole new set of problems while trying to solve an old one.
Totally. And, this whole discussion highlights another major gap that keeps popping up in the research. The lack of empirical testing.
Yeah.
Meaning a lot of the justifications for affirmative action are based on principles and assumptions that haven't actually been rigorously tested with real-world data.
We're kind of just taking it on faith then.
In a lot of cases, yeah. So it's like, are we making policies based on evidence?
Yeah.
Or are we just kind of winging it?
It's a crucial question, isn't it? Are we actually using critical thinking here? Or are we letting ideology drive the bus?
It's something to think about. It also makes me wonder, are we even asking the right questions about inequality in the first place? Like going back to that SAT score gap, are we really getting to the root causes of the problem?
I mean, if we're just focusing on getting more people into certain schools, are we missing the bigger picture?
Yeah, it's something to consider for sure. Now, here's another data point that I found super interesting. One of the sources actually suggests that within the Black community, the people who are already more advantaged actually receive a bigger chunk of the benefits from affirmative action.
Whoa, wait a minute, really?
Yeah, they looked at income levels within the Black community and found that students from wealthier families were actually more likely to benefit from these programs.
Huh, that's kind of the opposite of what you'd expect.
Right, it's like if the whole point is to uplift the most disadvantaged, but the data shows it's not working that way.
Then something's seriously off.
Totally. It kind of feels like this weird reverse effect where the program designed to help those in need ends up disproportionately helping those who need it less.
It's pretty mind-blowing, isn't it? Like, how do we miss something like that?
It's a great point. And it really highlights the need for a more nuanced and, data-driven approach to all this.
Yeah, it's not just black and white, is it?
Definitely not. So I think it's safe to say that there's a lot more nuance to this issue than we usually hear in the public debates.
No kidding. The data we looked at today really challenges a lot of common assumptions about affirmative action and how well it's working.
It really does. Which kind of brings us to a final thought-provoking question, right? If affirmative action isn't always the answer, what else could we be doing? Like, what other approaches could we explore to truly address inequality and create a more just society?
That's the big one, isn't it? What's the alternative?
Yeah. And I don't think there's an easy answer.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that we keep asking these tough questions and that we let the data guide us, not just our emotions or our ideologies.
It's about being open to new ideas, even if they challenge what we think we know.
Exactly. And that's what these deep dives are all about. So keep digging, keep questioning, and keep using those critical thinking skills. Thanks for joining us today. I'll see you next time.